What Cult would be is a layer on top of it. Like, this is a layer that is going to make health easy for you. 4 companies in one company. This is in hindsight probably a crazy thing to do, very ambitious, but we always had the DNA of being ambitious. How did Cult launch such a good digital product within a week of the pandemic, right? And there is no magic there. We had been working on it for at least 6-7 months before. The most impact that you create as a good product leader is when you stay in the problem space. Like, is this really the problem? Is this really the problem? And then once you deeply understand and appreciate what the problem is, only then you go into the solutions. Should be 50% whatever engineering developer, 30% product. The product managers need to go put that extra effort. It cannot be that I have figured out the solution, go and build it, right? And obviously that will not work with any smart engineer, right? And so
you have to figure out whichever tool, technology, language you might need to work.
Right. Yeah.
That's how the most high impact products get built.
Yes.
If you look at the most powerful companies in the world,
right? They have done actually the dirty work on the ground. Like, have they behaved like not just a product manager? I'll do my work versus who get things done, right? And it's a very hard thing to pinpoint to. That's a luxury that we enjoy and we value it also.
Welcome to the new episode of SCALERPOD, and today we have Santhosh with us. Santhosh has been building Cult, and today we are going to talk a lot about the entire journey of Cult over last almost 8 years now. Santhosh has a very, very interesting journey. Santhosh started out as a techie. You did internship at Google back in 2007.
Right.
Been a hardcore engineer,
yes.
Deep Tech, Stern Life Sciences,
yes.
Walmart Labs.
Yes.
I think in that time, these were some of the most difficult companies to get in. I know because I have given interviews for both.
Okay.
And then I think 2016 is when
Cult started.
You took the big leap.
Yes.
Joined Cult, and I think it was very interesting that very young company just getting started. So that is, and then at Cult again, tech, product, ownership for revenue, profit, P&L ownership, then becoming the CTPO, or managing both tech and product together.
Yeah.
Fantastic journey. Definitely I want to give it to you. You have built a product which is impacting lives of a lot of people in a big way. Right. I know it has impacted mine.
Yes.
I have been a Cult member and always loved the experience, not just the app, but also the overall experience, right? Be it the center, be it the behavior of individual, all of that, right? So thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
I'll start with the very first question. Going back 2016, why Cult? Why did you think that you want to invest few decades of your life into building Cult?
Right.
And while I'm sure, you were at Walmart Labs, life would have been great.
Right.
You're part of a big MNC at a senior role.
Right.
How did that happen? So when every time I have met Mukesh, one thing that he has always emphasized on, that I'm always very proud of people who I got into my team. Right. So I would love to double click with you that how did you come across Cult? What was that day zero?
Right.
When it was maybe 15, 20 people in the team. Tell us about that. And then we'll build on to that, how it became that $1 billion plus company.
Sure.
The whole journey.
Yeah, I'll go back to 2016. I think this was around September, October 2016, right? And I was with Walmart Labs, like you mentioned, but and this was a labs team within Walmart Labs.
Yeah.
Very high caliber team, etc. Like, I enjoyed my 2 years that I spent there. But one thing I was missing, the stint before that was with Stern Life Sciences, like you mentioned, and there being part of a small team where you have that energy where you can see the impact that you're creating, right? And basically a startup experience. I was missing that, to be honest, right? Then I'd made up my mind probably 6 months before that, saying, well, I think it's time to go back to startup world. And that was a natural fit for me, the kind of thing that excites me, right? And that's when Cult happened. So the way it happened is someone who was in my team, whom I was working with Walmart Labs, Ankit Gupta, he decided to move to Cult,
Very interesting.
and 1 month later I was in Cult, and then um, yeah. So the journey, I think I it always boils down to people for me, right? And what people and mission, I think two things, right? And the mission of Cult right from day one, right, which is making health easy, right? And that's what we have started with, and we have stayed through to straight through throughout, right? And that was something that I related to on a personal level. That's because, again, just going back, my journey with health, and I was someone who struggled with being overweight, probably I think this was in 2005 to 10 and so on, and then went through transformation and how profoundly it impacted me and so on. It's a way of like giving back, where if I can now do this at scale, where millions of people can benefit from this, then that is something that I would love to spend years on, right? And that was at a mission level something that I related to. Second, on people, I think, just the initial team that, like you rightly said, Mukesh and Ankit put together, that was just extremely high caliber team. Just that the initial chat that I had with everyone in the first, I think 10, 15 people or so, and the chat that I had with Mukesh. And to be honest, the initial pitch for Cult, even what Mukesh pitched me, he went to the whiteboard and drew something saying, "This is what we build." And it was one of those things where no one knew at the beginning what we wanted to do, right? And it was a very vague idea. And
can you tell us about that? That what was in 2016? What is it that Mukesh had that this is what I want to do?
I think the core insight was just that the health awareness is going up in the country, right? And you could see people starting to talk a lot more about fitness, people starting to talk a lot more about healthy food, avocado, and etc. Those are the things that started becoming more mainstream, right? And that was a general in the air macro trend that people noticed. Um, that and both Mukesh and Ankit were very passionate about fitness. So, and they decided, okay, this is the domain that we want to focus on. The initial thesis for Cult was it was almost like an Uber AI coach, right? Where health is not one thing. It is not just fitness. It's multiple things, right? And all of them kind of play very well with each other. So you have fitness, you have the right eating, whatever food that you eat, right? And then you have everything around sleep, stress, everything. Like these are different pillars of health. Pillars of health is what people call about. Can we have a it was from day one? It was a compound startup. Like we need to think of health as one large interconnected piece of things that we'll play on. And what Cult would be is a layer on top of it. Like this is a layer that is going to make health easy for you and provide the right kind of fulfillments, right? If there is a right kind of fitness provider, we will do that. We will partner. If not, we'll build it. Similarly for food, similarly for mental health, and similarly for primary healthcare. These were the areas that we had identified on day one. Original vision was it will just be a layer on top of it, the AI coach layer. That was what was pitched on day one by Mukesh, right? And but as with any startup, things evolve, right? And the Cult acquisition of Cure.Fit happened, and that is the product just took off, right? And you would know, like 2017-18, the craze for Cult, right? And that happened, and over time, it multiple pivots, and then pandemic, and then wherever we are right now. But the starting point was that it was an AI coach with multiple fulfillment layers. Either we build the fulfillment layers, or we partner with the right partner who meets our standards for the fulfillment. But we are a health player, like everything related to preventive health is what Cult will play on.
So the V0 you are saying was more of a AI health coach.
Yes.
And it's very interesting that in most of the startup journeys, there are two parts. One is, a very long-term vision,
right?
Which probably, as you described, that people are in the country are caring more about health, and we want to provide a ecosystem, a supportive ecosystem for that, which probably even over decades it remains the same,
right?
And then there are a lot of tactical things,
right?
For example, one that whether it will be a AI coach or there's something else.
Correct.
So you are saying that the V0 version was that we are gonna build a AI coach.
Yes.
How did it change over time? Because I'm sure every year, every other year, there will be some new learning, some new
Right.
interesting insights that keep
Yeah,
getting built,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? That how did that change
Yeah.
from what 2016 when
Right.
you are meeting
Right.
Mukesh for the first
Yes.
time
Yeah.
and he's explaining to you,
Correct.
this is my big grand
Yes.
vision and
Yeah.
this is what I want to build.
Right.
And I think as part of every startup journey, 6 months down the line, it will be key. Okay, we're going to build something else. Tell us about those, kind of, sometimes we call it pivot, sometimes it's not even called a pivot, but it's a big change into how we execute.
Right. Yeah.
So can you tell us about that from 16 to maybe 18, 19, what were some of these events?
So once we kind of narrowed down to this layer, the AI coach layer, then next comes the fulfillment. Like you can give all the advice in the world, but finally people have to go and get that fulfilled somewhere, right? You can say go and work out, but do they have a good place to work out, which is giving a workout experience which is much better than whatever else exists in the market, etc. And similarly, let's say take food. Is there good, easy access to healthy food, right in the market, etc. Our initial thesis there again was like, can we find something in the market and do partnering? And so we remain a very thin layer on top, and then we provide the insight layer and coaching layer, etc. But we quickly figured out that didn't exist and doesn't exist and doesn't work also, right? And so that's when slowly we started pivoting more and more into what is a fully vertically integrated model. So
basically you go deeper.
Yes.
That I am not only telling you should eat this.
Yes.
There's a button you can click it and it will be delivered.
Exactly, right? And that is the change that happened late 2016, early 2017. And that also coincided with the cult taking off, right? And that was an acquisition that we did very early in the Cure.Fit journey. And it started as a two-center thing, which Rishabh was running. And we acquired, and then we scaled the product, like we perfected the product and scaled it, right? And that just took off. And so that gave us more confidence that, this is the direction in which we should be going. When there is no quality supply available, and there is you cannot just be a layer on top which is giving advice. Like you can play the fully vertical integration game, and so we decided to double down on that direction. So go deep into fitness, go deep into fulfillment of healthy food, which is the Eat.Fit. And how this panned out was like 2017-18. It is not the AI coach layer. It is instead Cult.Fit, which is for fitness, Eat.Fit, which is for healthy food, and then Mind.Fit, which is for mental health, everything. And then there was Care.Fit, which is for primary healthcare. So we were in some sense like building four startups in one. Yes, 4 companies in one company. This is in hindsight probably a crazy thing to do, very ambitious, but we always had the DNA of being ambitious, right? So we took it up as a challenge and we pursued it.
Right. And then if we look back at your journey as well, right? You had been purely into tech.
Right.
Until Cult, you were 100% into hardcore engineer, building different stuff. During Cult, you spent some time in tech and then you switched over to product. Right. I think, and this is something that I see that a lot of my, people who I guide in tech, it's an aspiration that a lot of, even strong techies do keep. And rightly so. It's a very right ambition to keep. While, of course, not for everyone. Some people rather might want to just go deep in tech, be architects and build large systems. But there are a lot of people who want to and can build good sensibilities around a product and amplify their impact much more. Right? Another, I think, some of the people also hold an opinion that particularly when we talk about tech first products, a product manager who have deeper command on tech might perform better, right? Because of the deeper context. And in your journey, I think first I would love to double click on that. How did that change over from being a hardcore engineer to product happen? What motivated you to begin with? And then how did you kind of build the capabilities, skills for that? And what challenges you might have faced? I think that will be very helpful for a lot of our audiences who aspire to or have the ambition to get into product from a strong tech background.
Just in terms of journey, right? So till 2020, I was focused on just Eat.Fit, right? And so amongst the multiple verticals, there was Cult.Fit, Eat.Fit, and these were in terms of scale, the largest vertical within Cult.Fit. I was the head of engineering for Eat.Fit, right? This was when we headed into 2020 and then into the pandemic, right? And in pandemic, was difficult for Cult, right? And being a very offline heavy business, and suddenly, like, everything is shut, right? And so from whatever X revenue to zero, and just in a flip of one day, right? And that was a major thing. We can chat more about that. And we were
and what I find very, very inspiring is the resilience of the team.
Yeah.
I remember that time that it's a nightmare.
Correct. Yeah.
That there is a booming, thriving, growing business.
Correct. Yeah.
And suddenly it goes to zero. It's not like your revenue has been cut by 20% or 50%, 70%. It goes to zero.
Yes.
Right. And then being able to build that out, I'm sure that would be. I would love to maybe today dig more on that.
Yes.
Tell us your experiences being in that moment.
Right. Yeah.
And how it was.
Yeah. Pandemic was scary. Like just being in that situation. That was the initial first reaction. That's a very natural reaction. Like what is this that has hit us, right? And what do we do, etc. But the other side of it was like we put out a digital product very, very, very quickly. And in fact, people think that was a miracle that happened, right? How did Cult launch such a good digital product within a week of the pandemic, right? And there is no magic there. We had been working on it for at least 6-7 months before. So amongst the multiple things that we were trying in 2019, we put together a team specifically focused on digital fitness, right? And they started thinking about what would that differentiated product be and so on. And a lot of building happened. It just so happened that we coincided. The launch of that was the timing of it happened around pandemic. And so that's actually continues to be a much loved product, right? Where and that whole journey was crazy, right? And in some sense, there was a brief period where we were very, very bullish on the whole digital part of it, right? If you look at the first 2 months of the pandemic, yes, there on one side we had zero revenue. Yeah, there is like we had to figure out how to keep the show going, right? And with such a large presence also, there is a lot of burn in terms of like how do you contain it. And that on the other side, we had this bright spot, which is a digital product which is growing crazy. Like literally crazy. It was a week on week. I think it was like a 20-25% week on week growth, right? Imagine that kind of. And so we were like just reacting to it. And I think the whole team showed tremendous character, like how quickly we could pivot, like put all our attention resources to the digital side and see if we can make something out of it, right? And that was just crazy time. And so that we pursued that and continues to be a fairly large size business, the whole digital business, and continues to get a lot of love from customers. Right. I know even just before our chat, I was talking to some of your teammates, and some of them were big fans of the digital product of Cult, apart from the. So that and it was also that the emotional side of it, right? The 2-3 months into the pandemic, where everyone, and for a lot of people, Cult was it is also a form of addiction, right? Where they are addicted to fitness, and suddenly you are confined into your rooms, and then with no access to fitness, like etc. And then we had the right product, and it was not monetized for the first 3 months. So we just wanted people to continue the habit of working out, and so that was the other side of it, where there is one side we were bleeding, and then we're figuring out what to do, and the other side, at least we are getting that sense of fulfillment that we put out something and we're able to service a lot of customers. So, and that led to like I think 2 things. One, we also like went back to the original thesis. Can we again become a digital first company? And that's something we gave a lot of we gave it a fair shot. I think we continued doing that for at least 1.5 years, till probably late 2022, where we thought, can we be a digital first company and build a large business out of just the digital product that we had. And we tried different pivots, etc. But that hit its natural limit. And by end of I think 2021, it had kind of plateaued. And then and that's when offline rebound happened, and then we can talk about that journey, right? Post-COVID journey. But now going back to that period, that's when to an earlier question on tech product, right? And going back to that, there was a 3-month period. I think just when I think it was mid 2020, right? And there was this wonderful initiative called Swasth that happened, where a bunch of health tech startups got together, right?
I
And
recall that.
yeah, so it was Cure.Fit, Practo, one MGM, fine, lot of companies and a lot of hospital chains, etc.
I
We
think this
got
was
up.
also government initiative to put a lot
No,
of these things
government was not a government initiative, but they were supportive of it.
Right,
Like
right,
saying,
right.
yeah, anyone who wants to help.
Correct,
It was
correct.
just the need of the hour. Like
Correct.
anyone, anything anyone can do to help manage the situation,
Right.
welcome, right?
I
And
remember Gaurav from 1MG. He
yes,
was helping build that app, some
this was
app,
app.
Swasth
Yeah,
app,
yes,
right,
right.
right, right. Actually, some of Scalar students were also contributing to that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember
right.
Gaurav had reached out that
Sure.
I need 20 developers, and we will
Right.
have some students who
Correct.
can help.
Yes.
They might
Yeah.
not be
Correct. Yeah.
very senior developers,
Right.
but I just need to get it built
Yes.
immediately.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So that was a crazy experience. Like it was a 3-4 month duration where it was a fairly large team. Each of these startups, they contributed a few engineering resources and some product people, some design people, and so on. And we put together a team. Not just this, there was also on the operation side, oxygen cylinders, for example. They did a lot of arrangement of like figuring out whatever operation support is needed to get oxygen cylinders right place. And I was also part of that team. I was a volunteer for Swasth, and I was heading the whole engineering effort there. So it was like overnight we had 50 engineers, and then we had to manage and
And these engineers
fairly
were from different companies.
from different companies, right? And then getting, but it was also a great lesson for me on a personal level, where what can be done if there is a clear mission, and then you have people who are intrinsically motivated, and there is a sense of urgency, and yeah, and just insane clarity on this is what we need to do, what a large team can accomplish, right? And the amount of things that got built in the 2-3 months with a very diverse team, that was just crazy, right? And I remember Gaurav towards the end of it, he kind of on a light note, he was saying, you guys have built what we have been building for 3 years in 3 months, right? And how like if you keep doing this, then we'll run out of business. What for? But that was, yeah, crazy what is possible, right? And that's
No, I
what I
think
like this.
these moments actually tell us that the human potential,
Yes,
particularly
exactly.
of a group which is, as you said,
Yeah.
is motivated,
Yes.
has a sense of urgency. What
Right.
it can accomplish is
Yes.
insane.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And that was also like kind of kindled the builder in me, right? Where I started paying more attention to like what can we build, and the whole product side started coming out more, right? And going like it was not a formal product like skill. I was always interested in product, like, and I always believe that as an engineering leader, you need to have it's a equal partnership between the engineering leader and the product manager.
It's impossible to be a good
Yes.
engineering leader without understanding product.
Yes. So always had an knack of it, but the fact that you can build something from scratch, and I personally contributing to that and actually doing that in that 3-month period gave me a lot of kick, right? And thought, yeah, this is fun. I want to do more of this, right? And then went back to cult and then started doing more. Yes,
I want to do this.
right. And so started pursuing that more seriously, and that's how the switch happened, right? So
And then when you are, let's say you had this 3-month window,
yeah,
where sense of urgency, bunch of smart people with you,
yes,
and you had fun,
right,
right? And then there would be a journey that while this was a very serious stuff,
yeah,
but it was not part of a company.
correct, yeah,
Right? What might have been, so you built Swasth,
yeah,
had good impact. When you switched over to product more formally,
right,
that you are now back in the company,
right, yeah,
now you said that I want to
right,
take product ownership.
yeah,
What were the important skills that you realized
right,
that this is a missing muscle that I
sure,
need to build?
yeah,
Or what were the difficulties that you
sure,
faced
yeah, yeah.
in the very beginning?
I think it's not that suddenly one night, and from tech to product switch can happen. Yeah, it never happens.
Yeah.
Most of it was unlearning, I would say, right? And one key unlearning for me was being in the solution space versus being in the problem space, right? Which is being an engineer who likes to quickly solve problems, and engineering leader, etc. You often think solution first, right? Where when presented with a problem, you quickly think, okay, this is a solution, and then you start visualizing the solution. You think of the LLD, HLD, all of it, and then you can't. It's like you get that nervousness of like let's just quickly build it, right? And whereas
And
that is
sometimes we already have solution in mind, and we are just trying to fit that in the
yes,
problem.
exactly, right.
Yeah.
And And that's a hard instinct that I had to
And it's a very limiting
unlearning.
thing.
Yes.
It's a very highly limiting thing.
Yes. Whereas the most impact that you create as a good product leader is when you stay in the problem space.
Yeah.
Like, is this really the problem? Is this really the problem? And then once you deeply understand and appreciate what the problem is, only then you go into the solution space, right? And I'll give something very top of mind very recently, right? And which is 2 days back, I was interviewing someone for a product role, and the what they were trying to the person was trying to past experience, and one of the things they had done was build something for an FMCG client, and the problem statement was the sales people who are the on ground people who are going and doing the sales, their productivity was low, conversion was low.
Sure.
How do you improve it?
Sure.
And then the product manager who worked on it said they figured out the problem was they were using Excel sheet to monitor the leads, and so if we build a better tool for it and a better tracking for it, a lead management, etc., then this problem would go away. Possible. It's possible there's a problem, but I don't know. But when you ask more questions around that, was this really the problem, right? And how did you validate this is a problem? But this was a key unlearning. If, let's say, when I was still a tech leader, I would have bought it. I said, yeah, okay, then let's think about how to build a LMS, like a lead management system.
Yeah.
I know how to build a lead management system. I know how to build a dashboard for it. I know how to build the right data model for it, what database choice. You suddenly jump. That's your instinct, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now as a product leader, you need to think, okay, is this really the problem? Like, and then follow-up question was, how many people were they dealing with on a daily basis? 5 to 10. On a 5 to 10, I'm not convinced, right? 5 to 10, you can write with the notebook and still get it done, right? And then is that really the problem? And so on. Like, that's an example of an unlearning that I had to do when you switch from tech to product.
Right. I just have one interjection here that my personal belief is that while this is an important skill for product, but it's a necessary skill even to be a good engineer.
Agreed. Yeah.
This is something that, like, I sometimes feel that even as a kid, I had been a little rebellious kid.
Right. Yeah.
I always made choices which my parents were not happy about. That, why the hell are you doing this? Be it which college do I choose, out of all the options, which job do I choose, etc. Right? So I always had this question, like even as an engineer, right? I spent before starting the company, I was always an engineer.
Yes.
But I always asked counter questions to product folks.
Right. Yes.
Why?
Why?
You're asking me to build this, but why?
Yes. Exactly.
Explain. Like, I'm not saying I'm not going to build it.
Yes.
But you have to explain to me why.
Yes.
And I strongly believe that it's a very important skill even for engineer. Even if
Absolutely.
you're never planning to get into product.
Yes.
It's very, very important that you get into the why.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. It's and one of the frameworks that we use internally is a good engineer at cult, right? Should be 50% whatever engineering developer, 30% product, right? And the remaining 20%, there should be 10% QA. Like, you are responsible for the quality of your product, right?
Absolutely.
And for a long time, actually, we resisted in hiring a QA team, saying
we'll and most of the worthy tech companies,
right? Yeah.
Unless you are super large scale,
yes.
I don't think having a QA team is a good idea.
And the last 10% is infra. Like, you should know how whatever you're doing actually gets deployed and run, monitored, etc. Right. Having some understanding of the underlying infrastructure is also important for you to be So that is something that we believe in. I 100% agree with you on that. So you
mentioned you have to be a good developer, of course.
That is your primary responsibility.
Primary thing. You have to have good products.
Understanding.
You ask the why.
Yes, exactly.
Why are we building whatever we are building? Right. You have to take pride in quality. Of what you build. It's not responsibility of someone else to figure out what's not right with yours.
Yeah.
And then you have to know where it's going to run.
Yes.
You have to know the infra.
Yes.
You can't say it works in my machine.
Yeah. It's not I'll write the code and then I'll forget about it and then I'll not care about deployment.
One common meme there has been that it works on my machine. It's not enough.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. Fantastic. So as you said, first challenge as a transitioning into more product role was unlearning that.
Yes.
Getting away from the solution.
Yeah.
And focusing more on the problem and rather defining the problem more and more narrowly.
Right. Yes.
And more authentically.
Correct.
That
yes.
Really, what is the problem? Because always there are multiple layers.
Yes.
Right. In product, what do you consider as? Like, see, of course, I can see you have had very steep growth.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And congratulations on that. Looking back, reflecting back, what would you, I know it might be a little harder to answer,
Yeah.
but what would you consider as things that led to much faster growth? Or like I'm sure growth
Sure.
is always rooted in the kind
Right.
of impact that you are
Yeah.
able to drive.
Yeah.
And not many people, like at least as much I see, not many people have the kind of growth that
Right.
you have had.
Yeah.
What might have caused that? Like what, like our viewers, what are the kind of things that they can keep in mind? That am I doing this today? Particularly more in a product.
In the product. Yeah. So few things that I always believed in and I could drive it more as a product leader was focus, right? And I think this is a general tendency for any large organization. Like over time, the focus dilutes. And one of the things that I did first when I took over the whole product, the thing is like narrowed the focus, saying we will only focus on three things for the business, and those three things, and then these are the things that actually move the needle, right? And it was again some of the culturally because of the earlier version of cult where we were doing four different things,
companies,
like, and part of it was also led to lack of focus on a lot of things, right? And so and that kind of culturally seeps in at multiple levels, where everyone likes to do many things, right? And it's something that I always believed in, like focus is what will create impact. So one of the things is focus, saying no to things. That's one of the primary responsibilities of the leader. Like driving the right kind of clarity to the team, saying this is what really matters. This is the problem that we should be solving. Go and solve the problem, right? And then empowering them. That was one big change that led to.
So basically, do less.
Yes.
But then it comes with another level that when you are deciding to do less, you have to be able to pick which less is better.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So one is that having that deep insight,
right,
and backed by the right data, right insights, that this is the right thing to focus on.
Yes, exactly.
So first step is figure that out.
Right, yeah.
Instead of just, spray and pray approach that we'll try everything and maybe something stick.
Right.
Do less, but then make sure that the execution on that is really, really.
Exactly.
I have another thing to add there, that within teams as well, I see there are two kind of people. One are who would think that, I'll just pick more and more projects.
Right.
I'll pick one more project, I'll
right.
pick one more project, and
right.
I'll do a lot of things.
Right.
While of course, we have limited bandwidth
Correct.
as a human, right?
Yeah.
And then if I'm picking more than what I can manage, my delivery on each will be less.
Yes.
Versus there are some people who would say that I will pick few, but then I'll make sure that I'm picking the right ones.
Right.
And I'm executing with all intensity and leads to a needle move.
Yes.
I think that is another, at least in my experience, I have seen that people in the second category would take in less, but whatever they take in, they will make sure that it's the right thing that they picked.
Yeah.
And they deliver on.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's
generally, that is true. That is, I would largely agree, but I can recall a few people who have been successful in first also.
Correct.
But that is an exception, not the norm.
Right.
Where and I'll be generally more wary of people who say give me more, right? Which is unless you have good success under the belt, like saying actually give me proof that you have done something really well first, right? And then you earn the right to then do more, ask for more, right?
No,
and that is which build the
there are
leverage.
few who are beast of nature.
Yes.
And who can just run 5 projects with all intensity together.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, for example,
Exactly.
is running 3 crazy companies at the same time.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Then from product, then you also moved over to a P&L role.
Yes.
You are not just responsible for tech and product.
Right.
But then you are responsible to make sure of how much is the revenue growth, how much profit, how much investments probably should be pumped into a certain initiatives, which adds another layer of complexity to it, right? In a way, at this role, you are almost playing a founder's role, right? That how much capital allocation need to happen there, what kind of output it is giving.
Yes.
Tell us about that experience.
I think both, the product experience and then which led to the P&L experience. So it was a smaller portfolio within Cult, the whole digital portfolio, whatever took off during the pandemic. And then we wanted to continue pursuing it. So what more can we do in digital, right? That was and I was taking care of the product side of it, and then I also took care of the P&L side of it, right? And that was a very good experience in terms of just understanding finally what matters, right? Finally, it's a business, right? And you need to make money, right? And so it teaches you. You know a lot of these things theoretically, right? Where you know what is the margin, what is CM1, what is CM2, and so on, right? And those are things that you learn even when you are an engineering leader. That's something we encouraged, right? Internally, like you need to understand what the business model is, and then so that was one of the fundamental cultural tenets that Mukesh believed in is just access to information, being transparent, and all of it. There should be no information asymmetry, right? And which means you should have the context of what is actually happening in the business. And one is to know that on a theoretical level. Second is to be accountable for it, right? And it changes very dramatically when once you say, I will sign up for this kind of delivery in terms of revenue or growth or this kind of burn, and this is the capital that's given to you, and then make it work, etc. That changes a lot of things, right? And primarily around just lot around resource allocation. I think you will understand where do you when you have limited resources. It is true even when you're a let's say a product leader or engineering leader, you'll still have something that you need to work with, and then you have to make resource allocation calls there. But this is at one more level where it is not just within a team resource allocation. This is across multiple things, right? You need to depending on what the product is, like how much of, for example, let's say the digital product, how much should go into content production, how much should go into the tech product that we need to build for it, and how much should go into marketing, all of it, right? Making good judgment calls there, and all of it. That again opens up a new understanding of how to balance things, right? It helps you understand these trade-off calls better, and you start to appreciate these trade-off calls better when you're in that shoe. Like you might be on the other side where you're asking for more resources from a business leader when you're just a tech product leader, right? And whereas when you're in that shoe, then you start to appreciate more what kind of trade-offs as a business owner someone is dealing with, right? Second, you also better understand what is really driving value in this product, right? Take again the digital product example, right? Which is you have a workout experience where you have content that is shown on the app, and then you have around it a lot of bells and whistles, which is that you need to still build a product, the right kind of flows for it, and then right kind of whatever journey experience around it, etc. And over time, we kind of figured out the most of the value that is driven for this is in the content. As long as you produce high quality content, which keeps refreshing at the right rate, that's what customers want, right? And then whatever you add on top of it in terms of other journey elements, some coaching elements, some nutrition elements, etc., those are not adding incremental value, right? And if you're in this side where you're just thinking of how do I do tech product better, etc., then you'll keep pushing on that gas, right? Without understanding the nuance of where is value being created for the customer finally, right? And once you understand that, you can then do resource allocation better, right? And I think that is just opens up another perspective for you overall, and that helped better when I came back to just heading the product across, right? And understanding where is across cult, right? Where is value being generated here? Where should focus go for the tech product team? Where can impact get created more, and so on? That understanding just completely changes, right?
And I think then like post your P&L role, then you become the CPTO.
Yes.
Right? I can relate with it a little bit as a founder because I think you had the luxury to kind of spend time on building one muscle thoroughly.
Right. Yeah.
when you start a startup, you're thrown into all everything of it in one go. Right.
Yeah.
That if I look back, 2014, when I was just a hardcore programmer.
Yes.
I'm building fantastic stuff. And suddenly now I have to figure out product.
Yes.
I have to, of course, code as well, build it out. I have to figure out the capital as well, that, can we raise, how much revenue we have, how much salaries we can offer. And then in a way, you have taken a jump from the cliff and you're trying to build the plane.
Right, yes.
So from you, I would love to, I think, derive some insights on that. Having done tech, having done product, having taken a P&L responsibility, and then now you are functioning as the CPTO, owning both tech and product teams. Right. It's pretty interesting that, of course, being a CTO alone of a large organization like Cult, Cure.Fit is pretty complex and hard, right? Being a chief product officer is pretty complex and hard.
Right.
Now with this context, I can see that how you might be better able to manage it.
Right. Yeah.
But still, I'm sure it's super hard.
Yes.
Tell us about that. How do you manage that? And I think another connected question is also that often tech and product there are different kind of org structures exist.
Yes.
In many companies, there's a different tech team, there's a different product team, there's a CTO, there's CPO.
Right.
And there's often good number of complex I think friction, etc. that does exist between tech and product. How do you manage that as a one person owning both tech and product?
I'll take the first part, which is doing both, like
Yeah.
what are the challenges, what
Yeah.
like etc. Right, and this is an exception, not the rule. Having both the roles combined,
Correct.
right, and
Very few companies have that.
very few companies do it, and I think it just the context that I've built with Cult over time, right, and
I can
that
at
is
least, yeah.
it is just more a
I can tell you
coincidence,
from
right?
my experience that the
Yeah.
reason for that is often that it is not easy to find someone who is deep context.
Yes, exactly.
And like talking about your journey, you had an opportunity
Yes.
to kind of build deep
Yes.
context in both the domains.
That is primarily the reason,
Hmm.
because I half the journey I did in tech and half the
Yeah.
journey in product,
Right.
and overall understanding of the product,
Right.
being part of the journey from day one, understanding consumers, all of it.
Right.
It just became right place, right time, right? Nothing else. It was, I had the context, and so I could do it, and that was primary reason.
Yeah.
And second reason, what made my life easy also, and why I took this up, was also the next layer, right? Which is again credit to the previous CTO Nitin, who just recently moved on 3 months back. He built a very strong engineering manager layer, right? And that once you have that layer,
course
and
that
then that helps. Then your job is just to make their life easy after that, right? And then provide direction, provide clarity, and then help them like do whatever they want to do. And so it was not such a big stretch for me. But in general, I would agree with the thing that these are two different roles, and ideally you want two different people, because I had the context, I had the right kind of
And of course a strong
team,
second,
etc., everything, and I had been part of the journey. It just became easy for me to do.
Right.
On to the second question, which is like how to get the two teams to play better, right? And I think first it should not be two teams. It should be the way I think lot of tech companies are organized, and we are also organized as around pods, right? And a self-contained pod is an engineering manager, product manager, one or more product managers, and then a set of engineers, and then design, right? And if needed, QA. Like all of this together forms a pod, right? And they have a clear charter, what they need to accomplish, and once you have that, that is a basic functioning unit of your organization. Then things become a lot more easy. Second, I would put the onus on a lot more onus on the product manager. They need to do that extra bit to get the buy-in, right? And you have to, I think we discussed earlier, the engineers need to challenge the product managers, and the product managers need to go put that extra effort. It cannot be that I have figured out the solution, go and build it, right? And obviously that will not work with any smart engineer, right? And so it is the onus is on the product manager to get that buy-in and make a compelling pitch. And part of the product role is being a good salesman, right? And you need to sell that to your team also, right? And that's the only way you can get. If that happens, and that's where I think good product managers stand out, where they can do that selling process also well. Then I don't anticipate too much friction in terms of just the right kind of org setup and the right kind of cultural expectation that you set with the product manager and the engineering manager and with the rest of the team. That's what makes it work.
No, I think there are two important parts, and then later on I would love to take a deeper dive into. One is the culture, because there are rules and then there are cultures.
Correct, yes.
And rules can never, drive
yes.
the desired behavior. It can only give a guideline.
Correct, yes.
Culture is ultimately what becomes how people are behaving, even when no one is watching them. Right? So we'll take a deeper dive into that. And second is also on the org structure.
Right.
Because in this entire journey, I'm sure that you would have experimented with different kind of org structures.
Yes.
Which worked, which didn't work.
Right.
Before that, however, I thought I would take a more kind of get into more nuances of the tech decisions that you had taken. I know from my conversations with many of the tech leaders from Cult before, at Cult, you all took very interesting decisions with very hardcore technology itself, right? I recall long back, there was a decision made that both backend and frontend will be built in one language.
Yes.
Right? That will just use TypeScript.
Yes.
At all the places.
Yeah.
What all were the learnings?
Yeah.
All right. And then how has it evolved?
Sure.
I think some details on that will be super helpful.
Right. So on day one, this was one of the theses that we wanted to do. Like, can we have just one language? And it was a thought, and then TypeScript came as a good fit to that.
And what was the why for that? Why did you think that?
So we wanted, we thought it will reduce complexity, where you just have one language. Anyone who comes in, there's just one language that they need to learn, lesser learning curve. Yes.
Anyone can pick up anything.
And it should be easy to move across code bases, easy to move across even front end, back end, or the API layer or whatever. And you should be able to contribute. And there should be no silos, right? And you should be able to like move across. This quite frequently happens. I mean, I've done front end, even though I was back end. In the early days, you do everything, right? And everyone did everything in the early days, and it just helped with velocity.
I think, however, this is a very interesting, I think, point to note for a lot of engineers.
Yeah.
Because I do come across a lot of engineers
Yeah.
who strongly start believing after a few years in a particular technology that I am a Java developer,
Right. Yeah.
or I am a front end developer, or
Right.
I am a React developer,
Right. Yeah.
which I think is the biggest blocker to the growth.
Agreed. Yeah.
You're an engineer.
Yes.
You have to
You have
figure
to solve
out
problems, yes.
whichever tool, technology,
Yes.
language
Yes.
you might need to work in.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
The Eat.Fit, when we decided we'll do our own deliveries, it was again a full vertical integration. We had to build an app for the delivery boy, right? And who was going to do the delivery. And we didn't have any Android. We decided we'll just do Android. We didn't have an Android developer.
Yeah.
And so I decided and the first version of the, and something that I learned over 1 or 2 weeks, and then built the first version of the Android app for delivery people. So rightly said, like there are no boundaries. You should be able to learn
anything new quickly and be willing to experiment.
Yes.
And not be blocked by, I don't know this.
Right. Yeah.
You can
exactly.
just know anything.
Yes.
It's just a Google search away.
Yes.
So yeah,
On the
coming back
TypeScript,
to
yeah.
on TypeScript.
That was a reason. We thought it'll reduce complexity. You can move across code bases and move across front end, back end, etc. And you should be able to feel at home. And so this was a choice, like on back end Node.js with TypeScript, on web React, and then on mobile React Native, right? And on app. So that was the stack choice that we made, and we stuck to it for a while actually. And we started hitting some roadblocks, I think mostly on the performance side, right? On performance and also maintenance, I think. The kind of tooling that was available for the Java side, right? And actually the one part of
performance issue were more on the backend side that you were experiencing?
on both actually, right? And I'll talk about actually on the backend side. There were some. It was not that these are not solvable, right? The scale was not that crazy that Node.js cannot handle it, but it just took a lot of bandwidth, and there was also a skill gap. A lot of people, general JVM expertise is a lot more than Node.js expertise, right? Yeah.
It's also very interesting that often people think that the choices of framework and language is only dictated by just what is possible.
Right.
As you said, that one important variable for a large scale organization just becomes the talent availability.
Exactly. Yes.
Because it's not easy to maybe hire 50 engineers who know Node.js internals very well.
Yes, exactly.
But hiring 50 Java JVM internals.
Yes.
And then this becomes also a kind of loop feeding into each other.
Right. Exactly.
Because now more companies are hiring for Java, so a lot more people will learn Java.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the reason. So at some point we decided, okay, going forward we'll commit to Java, and so over time we switched more and more of the code to Java.
So your backend services were slowly got.
So right now about 80% of our code base is in Java, 20% still some legacy code is there in Node.js.
Got it.
Coming to the front end side, we didn't want to have a separate code base. We wanted to reuse between Android, iOS, etc. So we decided to go with React Native, and that TypeScript language choice also made sense. This we continued to persist it for a while, I think till 2021, 22 around that time, where we also did a major design revamp. We call it internally Arora design. And one of the things, I mean, we didn't evolve our design language. We also got a extremely good design head that time. And so that journey is when we decided we need a good facelift of Cult. Also important for the kind of brand that we stood for. We wanted a more edgy, aspirational brand, etc. So whereas our app still looked a little old school. So which meant a revamp of the app, right, and with the new design language. And what the creative team, the team that they came up with a lot of animations, and to make that get that feel of. And when we tried to do all of those with React Native, we ran into performance issues, right? And I'm pretty sure things have evolved in the last 2 years where probably a lot of those gaps would have been closed. But
there's a performance layer that always exists.
Yes, because of the JS bridge and communicating to the native, etc. And around that time, there was a new product. I was also involved in that. We started off from, it was 0 to 1 journey, and we had a really again high caliber. A lot of I think we had really good front end talent. Continue to have that. A lot of it from ex-Flipkart people. We had Kunal who was heading the front end team there, who moved to, and he brought in a lot of people from there. And one of the engineers, Amandeep, he he said like, I'm done with React Native optimization. I wanted to explore something new. And for this 0 to 1 product, which is a product within Cult, I'm going to try something new, right? And said, okay, fine, let's see what comes out. And he tried, went over this evaluation, and then came back with like, I think Flutter is the choice that we should go with, performance-wise, everything. And then we built that product. So inside the React Native shell, there was Flutter experience, right? And you could like visibly see the difference, like in terms of that product had a lot of micro animations, and the speed at which things would load within that part of the app was dramatically different compared to the rest of the app.
Very interesting.
Right? And so I said, okay, fine, let's go all in. And that was the decision to move from React Native to Flutter. But this is an app already used by millions of people, right? And so how do you do a rewrite? I have multiple ways. Like you can say, I will do a rewrite, and then that's a but that would again mean carving out bandwidth and then swapping, and then you're always playing catch-up game, because you continue building features, etc. So instead, we took a call. Let's do it slowly, right? And anything new that we do, let's build in Flutter, and anything old, slowly transition widget by widget into Flutter, right?
Would you have some insights on what might be the cause of the Flutter, particularly in your use cases, being so better performant than React Native?
The way it is done, I think it still uses native painting. Is my understanding, based on what Aman said, compared to this communicating, and then there's a communication overhead is what causes that.
So particularly when there are more animations, etc., then probably Flutter will start behaving much more performant than React Native.
Again, I'm pretty sure these are solvable problems, and React Native is again pretty large. It's just that what is the amount of resources you need to make that work, and the expertise that for making it work. We instead let's just move.
Right now, it's always contextualized. We can never say that React better or Flutter better.
Exactly.
It's always contextualized that in this specific product and situation, this was the better choice.
Exactly. And right now, I think probably 90% of our code, of our app is now Flutter powered. There's still some 10%, and I think in the next 3 months or so, we'll be 100% Flutter.
No, so I think this is also a very interesting part that often this is pretty common in any tech org which has been around for long enough. That there will be a time when there is a very foundational change that happens.
Right.
Could be something like from going from React to Flutter.
Right.
And probably a very young engineer with a lot of enthusiasm was, I'll just rewrite everything. Right. I'll just build everything. Give me a week. I'll just build everything all over again. Right. Practical reality is it's impossible. Right. And when we get to the how you did it. So primarily what you are saying is that first, of course, step was figuring out that how these Flutter experiences could be built in within certain silos.
Right. Yes.
Where they can existing app can continue.
Yes.
And certain parts are getting converted into Flutter.
Yes.
How would you pick that which one should be transitioned into Flutter first?
Anything that you're going to touch, right? And that's, step one was let's do a POC, right? That's the first.
Correct.
That was a new product that we decided, okay, here it's a fresh code base, fresh code that we're going to write, right? So let's just try, there's a good opportunity to do a POC. So we did that POC. We were happy with the results, etc. Now step two is how do you then, okay, now we have decided to go with Flutter. How do you then do that change? Our simple rule was anything new that you're going to write, let's just go with Flutter, which means some scaling up with the existing front-end engineers. They have to learn Flutter, Dart, etc. And so that happened. And then anything new that we write, where it's a new feature development, let's do. And then second part of that was anything that you're touching in the existing thing, where you're going and changing the code. That's a good opportunity when there's a major change that you're doing with anything existing. That's a good opportunity now to move to.
So in a way, you're saying there was no rewrite.
There was no rewrite. It was just an organic move over time. It took 2 years, right? And that's from 0 Flutter to now 90% Flutter. Took 2 years, but the other side of it is there was no major drop in velocity in terms of how things got done, etc. And we are happy with the final outcome.
No, I think that's the more practical and smart approach.
Yes.
I have seen organizations trying to pick up the mammoth task.
Let's do a full rewrite.
Sprint never works out. End of the day, it's always
correct.
Tears and blood and sadness at the end of it.
And you make a lot of stakeholders unhappy at that. And they say
a lot of things can break. Let's be. I think it's important as technologists to have that humility.
Right. Yes.
That we can't do magic.
Correct. Yes.
If there's a complex system and if I go and I'll just turn it around overnight, it's going to break.
Exactly.
No, very interesting. I will also double click on your decision to move a lot of services from Node earlier to Java, right? As you said, there were certain performance issues
Yes.
which might have been addressable.
Right.
So how do you compare the two? Again, there would have been an interesting journey as well.
Right.
That how do services started
Right.
moving one by one. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that.
Most of this happened during the COVID
Okay.
time, right, where
Interesting.
where we were truly hit by scale, right, where there was hyper scaling, and
Right.
I mentioned about the 20% week on week growth, right, and
Right.
so pretty much the whole engineering team focus was like, how do we keep up with this kind of growth in that 3 to 4 month
And I
period?
think a
Right?
lot of use case would have been streaming related,
Yes.
right? Particularly in that
Streaming, and there is a lot of and similar to if you go back to the experience that we continue to have, we're trying to recreate the cult experience in a digital way, which means there are classes. It is not that you just come and start a video. Instead, we had a class which starts at 6 p.m. right, and then anyone can join that class, and then you'll have a live leaderboard that is based on how. So we had what we called an energy meter, right, which is based on posts and how amount of movement, etc. It'll give you a score.
Correct.
And there was a live leaderboard based on that, and that was what the part of the product that actually made it compelling as a user experience, right? Which meant, and we also especially during the initial months of COVID, we had a lot of celebrity classes also,
Correct.
where we would have etc.
Classes.
Right, and which meant you would have a peak problem, right, and exactly at 7 p.m. right, you would have
Suddenly
crazy peak. It's similar to how the IPL Dream 11 problem, etc.
What would be the typical scale?
I don't actually recall the numbers. At peak, we were close to I think 1 million DAU, right, and so that was
this is unlike IPL where it is just one way streaming. It's two-way IO. Like basically there are a lot of inputs from the users which are also going
right.
in.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was literally firefighting for us, where in terms of backend scalability, etc. There was that period where pretty much everyone was working on this, and that's when we actually put to test the node performance and a lot of things, and there were POCs that we ran, like same code base, like let's do a quick rewrite in Java and then compare the performance and then compare the loads. It was, again, context-wise, like if you get down to fine-tuning Node, probably you can achieve the same.
Correct.
But just we couldn't afford that time.
I
right?
think there are certain use cases where it sometimes just because of the underlying architecture, Node in some cases might just be better.
Right.
In some cases, just might not be better.
Yeah. And every performance test that we ran, the vanilla Java version compared to the vanilla Node.js version, Java was hands down better, right? And that just gave us a lot more confidence. And so that's when we decided, okay, let's start moving. And then we started slowly moving, similar to the Flutter journey, where at one point we said no more fresh code in Node. Whatever we are writing fresh, let's start writing in Java. And that transition also took its own sweet time. So right now we don't write any code in Node.js. Anything new is Java. And then over time, lot of pieces where a lot of code changes happen, we decided to rewrite that in Java. Right now, again, probably 80-90% of our code base is in Java now.
Understood. There might be one trade-off that some of the architects and engineering managers might argue, though, that while this approach is more maybe safer, longer distributed over longer time, but it also comes with overhead of having to maintain two.
Correct.
You have to maintain a team with expertise in both the fields.
Right. Yeah.
There's a maintenance for both. How do you compare that trade-off that having to run two code bases in parallel, where slowly content is shifting from one to other, versus trying to compress that as much as you can?
I think it is.
Because even today, I'm sure you have to have some Node.js experts.
Yeah.
And of course, a large team of Java experts.
And I think largely dependent on context again. Like, can you afford a 3-month period where you can do a bulk thing, right? That's what. And during COVID, we couldn't afford that.
Correct.
Right. And it was a wheel that had to keep running, right? And we were trying multiple things and see what would click, right? And it was a question of survival in that 1 year, 2020 at least for us. So that was not the time. We had to do firefighting and then figure out how to quickly handle the scale that was hitting us. There was no time to, and while in parallel trying to get the product also better and working. in terms of, we got crazy demand, we had to keep up the demand, but it was still free demand. Like we had to then monetize it, and which meant is the product ready to be monetized, and which means the product needs to be a notch higher. Which
So
meant
in a way,
10
your risk appetite was much lesser in that time on the tech side.
it was not. No, rather than risk appetite, I would say it was not a time where we could afford a 3-month or a 6-month rewrite.
Right.
Probably a more. It was wartime, right? And then
Correct,
probably a peacetime is where we
correct.
could have tried a rewrite kind of an approach.
Correct.
And during wartime, you have to take calls
I
quickly.
think it's always wartime.
Yes. True. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And I think another connected thing which I feel is that it also sometimes dependent on what kind of team is the one working on it. Like in my experience, I have been through a similar transition and we took similar approach, right? But also another thing is that in our team, it was not that these 3 are Node engineers and these 4 are Java engineers.
Right. Yeah.
Like all 7 of them know Node,
that is true.
know
Yes.
Java.
Yeah.
They can figure it out.
That's the case right now also with Cult. The engineers, backend engineers, they are very, they're quite.
They're kind of polyglot engineers who can figure it out.
Yes.
I think as opposed to more larger setups,
Yes.
when it's a 5,000 or 10,000 engineer
then you have a lot
company,
more specialists. Yeah.
then probably you have a lot more specialists, and then decisions might be very different.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then you have a Java expertise team, and then whatever they are doing, they cannot touch Node. So I think these decisions sometimes are also dependent on what kind of team you have.
Completely agree.
Yeah. Now another question that you talked about crazy scale that Cult has operated at and operates at. At the same time, however, Cult is also very operational heavy business. Right. You have centers, you have people physically coming in.
Right.
While it's other side, but I'm sure so much interactivity from the trainers, people in the floors. How does such a ops heavy business, what kind of tech needs does a ops heavy business present?
Sure.
Because sometimes, like I think there are a lot of misconceptions that exist about a ops heavy business.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, and given even in your past background, you like, for example, during your time at Walmart Labs, it was purely tech. Right. I remember interacting with many of the Walmart Labs leaders. It's like, it's online business, build these tools, X revenue comes in, and we are happy. Right. Versus your experience building for a very ops heavy business.
Right. Yeah.
How does it differ? How does the tech work for? What kind of value does that tech add, or what kind of opportunity is it present for tech?
I think it's dramatically different, and that's a big mindset shift that you have to do also. Like going back to again the earlier point that I mentioned, where is value created for the consumer here, for the business here? You need to have a good pulse of that, right? And it's very different in a operations company and also very different in terms of margin profile. Like if pure software business, it could be very different margin profile, and in terms of what you're trying to do versus a operations heavy a fitness business, a gym business, it could be very different. And so how is value creation happening?
SaaS can have maybe 80% gross margins, but it's impossible to drive that in a physical gym business.
Exactly, right. So a lot of those choices, these are practical realities. Like, and you have to like make and work with this and then figure out how do you then create impact with that, right? And for a business like Cult, there are a few areas where actually that journey, like we tried the digital pivot, right? And then but the offline rebound happened. That happened in a big bang way, and in fact it surprised us, right?
That was very interesting. Pre-COVID, during COVID, you have to shift all digital, and then post-COVID again you have to go back to a physical world.
And that is clear. I mean the consumer behavior is that doesn't change, and it was a forced change. We thought that change will stay, and that we tried the digital pivot, but clearly the customer said no. We want. I think working out is a very communal activity. Correct. Like which the social nature of it is what people enjoy. And
just going to the gym, saying hello to people you meet every day. It's important.
That's an integral part of the overall experience. So you cannot take away that. And there is an audience for people who want to work out at their home, but that's a small. It's a small business, right? So people, in hindsight, it is not surprising that people came back to the gym. So that big rebound happened in 2022, late 23, and so on. And now we are well and past behind. I mean, past the COVID debacle, right? Whatever in terms of just scale, we are much. Actually, in terms of revenue, we surpassed our pre-COVID revenues, which was like 3 different businesses. Now, Cult alone as a business is much beyond that, right? And so, recovery is well and sound, right? Now, which means now, how do you for this? This is a business. This is going to be bread and butter for us. Like, what role does tech product play here, right? And another nature of this business also, it's a service business,
It
right?
is.
Finally, and which means the frontline staff matter a lot. I would argue the most value that gets created in a cult like product is with the trainer, right? And especially in the group class format, the trainer is the product, is what we internally refer to, right? And so a lot of focus, at least even for the tech product team, goes to how do you empower, how do you build the right kind of support for the trainer, right? And if you trainer the product, how do you make the trainer a 10x trainer, right? And that is a big focus area, right? And there are things that we have done. For example, if you go and into a any group class in cult versus any other traditional gym, you would see a screen where the workout, there is what we internally call the screen assisted training, right? So there's a remote and the screen, whatever, let's say the trainer has to explain a particular movement. The trainer will explain that movement once. And this was a common pain point before this product was there, where the trainer had to again explain. There will be confusion with a few people who have gotten it the first time. So they will ask for it again and then they'll do it. And so that was causing inefficiencies. Whereas actual value addition for a trainer is paying attention to the customers on the floor. There'll be someone who's doing the wrong form, which can cause injury. He has to go and help that person and so on, and give that individual attention. So the right product that helps that trainer at that moment is, once the trainer explains the movement, can a replay of that movement happen on the screen? So someone who didn't probably follow it, they can just look at it again on the screen, and then now it makes sense, and then they can do. And the trainer work is offloaded now. The trainer now can pay attention to the customers, right, and to the members on the floor. And so that's an example of a product that customers love, trainers love, right? And that's where value gets created, right? And that's where you have to pay attention to.
No, I think, but these are, as a product lead,
Yeah.
A lot of these insights can only get built when you are also in the session.
Absolutely. Yeah, correct. Yeah. And that's a luxury we have. Like, you could very well work on a product where you can't relate to the product. Whereas Cult is a product where you can make the product and you can experience the product. So you know as a customer when something is not working. Yeah, one of our product managers saying, he likes to say this, who's in the team right now, I'm not building a product for the customers, I'm building the product for me. And so that's a luxury.
But I think that's how the most high impact products get built.
Yes.
If you look at the most powerful companies in the world,
right,
almost all the founders were building it for themselves or people around them.
Yes. Yeah.
Coming back to this operation heavy.
That's an example of how do you treat frontline staff as a key persona, right? It's not just customers. How do you build for them, right? That's a key theme that we pursue. Second is efficiency. Like, finally, it is a fixed inventory, right? You have so many slots, like, and similar to airlines. How do you then maximize efficiency within the fixed inventory business, right? And a lot of tech product focus goes there. We have built a pretty sophisticated waitlist algorithm, for example, right? Where classes, you book the classes and then it goes into waitlist, and then the right kind of overbooking based on cancellation.
Airline business.
Yes, exactly. And all of the bells and whistles that come with that to drive maximum efficiency. A lot of it is then, all of it directly flows to the bottom line. And again, being the kind of margin business, that's a clear impact creation that happens.
So you will have to, for this booking of the class, and then you do some predictive overbooking.
Yes.
I believe you will have to do a lot of predictive analysis.
Yes.
Like, what kind of technologies, etc., do you use for that, or what kind of do you use, let's say, ML algorithms to predict, an individual level and statistical level?
Yes, that's precisely the model that we have. There is both an individual behavior and there is an overall class level behavior, and then there is past history of.
So basically, you know that if Abhimanyu books a cult class 10 times, he doesn't turn up 5 times.
Yes, exactly.
So I know if he is booking it, I can overbook him, someone for him.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah.
and it might also be like as much you can spill.
Of course,
what kind of?
There is a blog we have written on it, so
very interesting. I think we should have the person just run us through that blog sometime with more details.
Right.
But on a short, what are, let's say, some of the top strategies that have worked out really well in predicting what kind of overbooking could be done without causing overflow into the class?
Right. Yeah. So it is largely the cancellation. Maybe it's a human thing to be optimistic about turning up for a class, right? And when you are in the right frame of mind, like, I'm going to start from tomorrow, and then you'll book the class.
Right.
But then reality hits, and then usually 1 and 2 turn up, right? And so
1 and 2?
I mean, in terms of booking to actual
booking to turning up. And do you see any patterns across the centers as well? That there are certain centers which have...
there is. rightly said, there is center level nuance, there is person level nuance, there is format level nuance also.
Very
so we have
interesting.
dance, we have strength training, and then we have yoga, we have burn, etc.
Got
Every
it.
format behaves very differently, right?
Very
And the
interesting.
cancellation behavior is very
Got it.
different in, or the booking behavior is very different in every format.
Right.
Yeah, so a lot of
While
these
I will
nuances.
read the blog on that you have
yeah.
written, but it will be very interesting data for me to know that, for example, in Bangalore, you say that Indiranagar have high cancellation rates versus Belandur has low cancellation rates. So people in Belandur
That
are
is
more
true.
serious.
Yeah,
I'm sure there might be some such patterns.
there are.
Uh,
Yeah.
Great. Uh, I think now there is a certain tech product
Yeah.
operation nuances that the team has. And I think every company, and particularly, companies like Cult or most of these startups, which have a very unique culture to it,
Yeah.
right? Often, like the narrative often is that, okay, I'm a fantastic engineer, I'm a fantastic product manager, so I'll be a good fit anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Generally, reality is far from that.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? What kind of people
Right.
you have seen really thrive, create good impact, really, working out fantastic in your
Right.
team.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm sure even your decision making would have evolved a lot
Right.
over the last 7, 8 years.
Right,
That
yeah.
what kind of people you would want to
Right.
hire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us about that, both for product and engineering.
On product,
Or
let me
what are,
start
let's
there,
say, top 3 principles that if you are coaching and if you're
Yeah.
hiring manager,
Right. Yeah.
that these are the 3 principles
Right.
that you should keep in mind when you're hiring.
I'll speak specifically for Cult and for the product role. Let me start there actually, right? So, there are like table stake skills, like that's like a filter. Like you need to understand data, for example. You need to understand customers, empathy. All of those are table stake skills that you need to do. But beyond that, what are the things that sets you apart, right? And I'd say like the product. A lot of people have this thing that product is tech product, which is like for Cult, they assume the product is app, right? It is not that, right? It is the 1 hour that the customer spends in your center. That is the product.
Even marking on the floor of that center.
Yes, that is the product. So that is a switch not everyone makes. Like they still want to be in the comfort zone of I will create that virtual reality where like it's everything is in the app, etc. Whereas it is a lot of being on the ground, right? And that's where you truly understand what makes the product work. What is the pulse of the customer? What is happening with the trainer? What's happening with the center manager? All of those things, right? Spending a lot of time on the ground is surprisingly a hard thing. A lot of people find it difficult to do. Where you need to understand the product end to end, right? And you cannot think of it in silos. I'll do just this part, and that is the responsibility of operations team. And when you think someone who thinks like an owner across end to end is something that people who do that really well tend to do really well at Cult, right? Another example that
do you have any kind of strict policy for your product team, for example, that everyone has to have a Cult membership, do these many sessions?
There is, I mean, that's one of the policies. We can talk about just fitness at Cult as a separate topic also, but everyone at Cult gets a Cult membership for free, right? And we encourage that. There's no strict policy. I don't believe policy is the right way to do it. It's a culture, right? Where people just go out. At the end of the day, a lot of people just go out, go together to a Cult class, right? And once you have that culture, then culture filters itself, right? And that takes care of. So that's the short answer on like.
In the product, basically, what you strongly believe in that, of course, table stake skills are the screening.
Yeah.
But those who are able to see product is beyond the screen.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And be on the ground and experience it, and then how do you evaluate for that in the hiring process, though?
Evidence. I mean, the hiring process, people say things, right? It's hard. Exactly. You look for evidence in the past where they have done actually the dirty work on the ground. Like, have they behaved like not just a product manager, I'll do my work, versus they go beyond it and then they do demonstrated things where they have done things beyond what is confined of a typical product role, right? And that's usually the evidence that I look for. Yeah, that's a short.
Got it. And
apart from it, few more things that I specifically believe in. There's a big difference between people who tried their best versus who get things done, right? And it's a very hard thing to pinpoint to. Like there are just people who figure out ways to get things done, and there are people who somehow always run into roadblocks, right? And And I keep mentioning this also to my team, which is the best people also use everyone in the leadership as a tool, as a tool for them to for work, for their work to get done. Right? If they face a roadblock, there are people who come and complain, whereas there are people who come and say, I want to use you as a way to remove the roadblock. Can you go and get this roadblock removed to me?
Yeah.
Those are high agency people, right? And
Correct.
there is again very hard skill to test during hiring.
Correct.
But people who have that knack of getting things done,
Right.
they just have insane growth. And
I think high agency is a very, very
Yeah.
critical part, which not only higher impact in the organization. Like my personal experience have been that just having high agency is one of the biggest lever for personal growth.
Yes,
as well.
absolutely, yeah.
Another related thing, I have experienced it and read it in one of the articles as well, that people who keep responsibility for their own success with themselves
Right, yeah.
always end up succeeding a lot much more.
Agreed completely. Yeah.
Versus people who even pinpoint it on my environment,
Right.
etc.,
Right, yeah.
then the probability of success is
Yes.
much lesser.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
If environment is not good, you should change the environment. It's
Yeah,
your responsibility.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting. Again, any insights on how do you check for high agency when you are, evaluating someone, whether they will fit in the team or not, that whether the person is high agency or not?
Again, it's a very hard skill to test for.
Correct.
Look for evidence in the past. That's again what you, where did they hit a roadblock? How did they overcome the roadblock?
Yeah.
And then you hear sometimes crazy stories like people take shortcuts. They can finally the ends justify the means, right? And so it is okay. Like as long as you don't cross some clear boundaries, like things like that is what are there interesting stories that you have where you have overcome a significant obstacle. How did you go about doing that?
Right.
There isn't, you cannot frame that as a problem statement, right? Because agency is demonstrated in everyday work, right? And it is not a problem solving capability that you can test in an interview. So it is just evidence for in the past work and ref checks, right? And especially for senior role, you go do ref checks where you, again, people come up with good stories, then you can validate whether actually was this the true story that happened with the ref check.
Another tool that I seem to have, of course, over years, I'll see whether how well it really works or not, is that everyone would have something or somewhere where, you failed.
Right, yeah.
Right? What do you attribute your failure to?
Good point.
Do you attribute it to your own thing and you have a clear reflection that I could have done it differently and it would have been better?
Yeah.
Versus do you attribute it to, I did my best and still it didn't happen?
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, good.
Because this is another thing that I have again observed.
Yes.
That many of the students who I guide, share inputs on, something as simple as that you went in for a job interview, you got rejected.
Right.
Yeah. Now, do you just say that, no, I gave interview perfectly. I have no idea why they rejected me or they never followed up with me. Right. Versus people who say that, no, I thought about it. I thought I made these two mistakes and probably, this is what I could do to improve on that later. Second category always end up, figuring out things in their life, have better outcomes.
Right.
And which in a way is a signal of high agency for me.
Exactly.
That I'm trying to discover what can I do to make things better.
Yes. Yeah.
Coming to the technology, when you are hiring, given I'm sure you would, given your tech background, you would be deeply involved with tech hiring most of the times as well. What do you look for when, hiring for tech, both at, say, leadership level or a level below leadership or below that? What kind of engineers do you think thrive best at Cult?
Yeah, so I believe in product engineers, and especially for it depends, I think, again, for the context, for a cult kind of thing, someone who has a knack of a little bit of product thinking, right? And can ask the right kind of questions, etc. They tend to do really well. And someone who does not stereotype themselves, saying I'm a Java engineer or etc. Then instead saying I'm a problem solver, right? And give me a problem to solve, I'll solve the problem, right? And that's those are the kind of things that people who obsess over one technology, saying this is what and form their identity over that technology is a red flag for me.
Kind of red flag. Yeah. Right. Unfortunately, I think in Indian tech industry, however, a lot of people are kind of motivated to get into that. You know, just be into one thing, just focus on one thing, which often is kind of very harmful for their own careers.
Right.
So as you said, one is that being a problem solver, not a Java developer or a .NET developer or whatever.
Right.
Second, you are saying that someone who asks more questions.
Yes.
You are not a code monkey.
Right.
You just don't do just whatever someone asks you to do.
Yes.
but someone who is more, who asks questions. Why are we building this?
Right. Yeah.
How would people use it? Who is
Right.
going to use it?
Right.
I think you like connecting back to something that you had said very early on,
Yeah.
that you joined Cult because you were not finding that in your previous role.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
That you were not able to find the why.
Correct.
I'm
yes.
building some fancy tech,
Yeah.
but where is it
Where
going?
is
Who is using it?
Exactly. Yes.
So basically, engineers who really, really care about it. And I think people who really care about it, as you,
Yeah.
didn't even continue there.
Right.
You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
this is not what I enjoy
Right.
doing.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with it, those
Right.
who do it, but there is a subset of engineers who just can't live with that.
Yes.
So those are the kind of people.
Yes. And both for product and tech, one general thing, not just product tech, I think across the board in Cult we look for is mission orientation. Like we truly believe in the mission of
Right.
making India fitter, right? And
Right.
or making health easy, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And they should be able to relate to that mission, have that passion, right?
Yeah.
And that's something universally we look at.
What is mean BMI of Cult team?
Actually, don't know that. Right? It's a good data to pull up. But I'm pretty sure. Like just looking at it,
It will be 20, 18, 19, 20 maybe.
not 89. Probably in the early 20s.
2022.
Yeah.
No, great. But yeah, I think important. You should put a screen in the office of the mean BMI of the team.
Right. Yeah.
That's interesting. I think with this entire context, I have two more things that I'm very curious about.
Right.
One is, what kind of org structure
Right.
you have designed, and I'm sure there would have been multiple
Sure,
iterations
yeah,
over 7-8 years. What worked, what didn't work.
Yeah.
And second, then I would love to take a deep dive into the culture building
Sure,
pieces. Right?
yeah.
Again, it's a journey, right?
Right. Yeah.
There would have been certain, like, as much candidly you could share.
Right. Yeah.
That what is the time when you thought that the culture is breaking?
Right. Yeah.
What were those breakages that you can observe as well?
Right.
Because culture is something which is very, touchy-feely.
Right. Yeah.
You cannot measure it. Like,
Correct.
unlike, the mean BMI, you cannot
Right,
say that
yeah.
this is my
Yes.
mean indicator of culture at the
Right,
company, right?
yeah.
Let's first take a deep dive into the org structure.
Right.
Maybe we can start with what does it look like today?
Sure.
Because I'm sure a lot of founders who might be watching this
Right.
podcast, a lot of engineering leaders who are
Right.
watching this podcast,
Right.
it's a very curious question for them.
Right.
I'm sure like all applauds to the team
Yeah.
and you for having built a engine which
Right.
produces very high quality products.
Right. Yeah.
And it's often not visible,
Right.
but a lot of that is also rooted in the engineering behind the org structure itself.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So tell us a little bit about that, and maybe I'll also try to draw it out
Sure.
for better
Yeah.
explanation. But what does the org structure look like today?
Yeah.
And how did it evolve? What
Right.
were the learnings
Yeah.
on the journey of getting there?
Yeah, I'll talk about the org structure right now, and also about the history of it. The structure right now is, I think, very similar to how what people call the pod structure, right? And with a little bit of nuance, which is we treat pre-PMF products and post-PMF products differently. Like a product which in a scale journey
Understood.
versus a product where it's still a lot of
Zero
things
to
should be
one
0
and
to 1 or probably
experimentation.
even 1 to 10 kind of this thing where a lot of experimentation is happening. The difference happens this way. I mean, first, the constitution of a pod is a classic, similar kind of thing that we have where you have one or two product managers, and then there's an engineering manager, and then engineering team, and then design, and then QA, right? And all of this. And there are usually, depending on the type of the pod, there would be non-tech counterparts also who work very closely with the pod.
Understood.
Right. For example, a pod which is focused on operations, right, and etc. A lot of that also
There's a
includes
center
an
operations. There's a
Yeah, center
pod which is
operations, yes.
center operations.
Yes,
yeah.
and so the stakeholders from there work very closely with this pod. And similarly, let's say a growth pod, which is focused on growth.
Right.
The growth team works very closely with that
Right.
team and so on.
So
right?
operations, however, you are saying is not reporting under this pod,
Yes.
but it's a very
close
tight
collaboration.
integration.
Yes. that's it.
Got it.
So
And
on the-
each pod basically will have a pod leader.
Yes.
How do you pick who is the pod leader? Like,
Yeah.
is it someone from product? Is it from tech? Someone from
It could be either, and it's usually the slightly more senior person in the team, and
Right.
there are examples of both. There are pods where the product manager is the pod lead, versus the pods where engineering manager is the pod lead.
Understood.
Right, and so
And depending on the context and
Context
the
and
seniority
pod-
of the person
yes.
and capability of the person
Yes.
involved.
Yes.
But there's no such rule that it's
No.
going to be a tech person or product
No.
person or design person.
Yes.
Understood.
Then on the other nuance of 0 to 1, this thing, the once, I mean, for a scale
How many
product,
such pods do you have?
We have 7 or 8 such
And on the
pods.
segmentation, you said there is one set of pre-PMF
Yes.
pods.
Yes.
There are scale pods, 10 to
Yeah,
100 journey.
yeah.
Probably these pods would be like, if I double click on that, what are the KRs for these pods?
Right, yeah.
Not specifically, but
Yes,
more.
yes.
So what kind of KRs would you keep for pre-PMF pods?
Yes.
Because that's sometimes very complex questions, right?
So pre-payment pods, they are, I mean, they are generalists largely, right? And so it's the job for them is make the business work, right? And make the product work, get to PMF. That's the mission of them. And there'll be PMF criteria for every product that we have.
Got it.
Largely, usually it'll be retention or some kind of, can you make the business model work, right? That's the...
Basically, you create a proof
Yes.
that it makes sense to invest more on
Yes.
this unit and
Yes.
try to get into
Yes.
post PMF phase.
Yes. Yes.
Or we say that, sure, we run
Yeah.
the experiment, it
Right.
didn't work, so let's roll it back.
And so there it's not specialist, like the team is responsible for everything. Let's say the growth, the operations of it, or the experience that we want to do, everything is self-contained in that one pod.
Got it.
They are just responsible for making calls within that, what is needed to make the PMF work. Whereas something like our core business, which is, let's say, Cult, there we have more specialized pods. There's a separate pod for growth. There's a separate pod for experience, for retention, for operations, and so on, right? And there the KRs are very different, right? And for a retention pod, of course, it is retention. For growth, it is, and the growth related, and so on. The KRs are well defined, and over time they also build that context and what needs to be done. This is where we are right now, and just going back, and I'll also kind of touch a bit on the other part, the question that you asked about culture, etc., right? And because kind of ties together, and then evolution from there happened. Because Mukesh and Ankit, like, they were second-time founders, and so they had a lot of strong opinions on how the org should be built, right? And so we did a lot of experiments. And actually, I'd say, like, when I mentioned earlier that October, November, when I was talking to Kal, they had nothing, and a lot of things were still being figured out, etc. But one thing they had was a constitution. So the team spent at least 3 months. The first 2-3 people, at least, they spent 3 months writing a constitution, saying this is the Cure.Fit constitution, and what we believe in. It's almost a 10-page document, right?
Very
And
interesting. Is that a public document?
It is not.
Is it possible to make it a public document?
Actually, a good idea.
I will probably drop a text to Mukesh as well. It will be fantastic to read through that.
So that had multiple, and that also that constitution led to a lot of policy choices also, right? One of the choices that we made, a lot of people mention it, like, we don't have titles. We still don't have titles. I know we called me a CPTO, whatever, CTO, etc. But that's very late in the journey, probably in the last 6 months or so, largely because of the context again, heading towards IPO, all of those things. Some formalization of the org needed to happen, and so we got into that journey.
This I can relate a lot with, because even like in my org, or Anshuman tells from his Facebook days,
right?
Like even after 4 or 5 years in Facebook, almost reporting directly, like just like a level below Mark.
Right. Yes.
His title is software engineer.
Yes, exactly.
And
that's
even
how
for me, in my entire professional life, the title had always been just software engineer.
Yes. That was the choice that we made. So no titles. No, there was one of the choices again early we made was there was no reporting manager, right? And you always had what we said were project teams, right? And then there's the project team similar to pods, but with a little bit of nuance. So you have project members and the project manager. That's it, right? And it is quite possible you are a project manager of one project and also a project member of another project, right?
Got it.
If you had, let's say, not encouraged, but let's say it's possible, in which case you don't have a reporting manager, right? Every project is a self-contained with a clear objective, mission, etc. that you have to accomplish this. The clear accountability lies with the project manager. It is more just, and then we had a separate, for mentorship, there was a separate person, right? You not necessarily reporting manager. The only focus of that person was for your career growth, right? And that was a choice that, but
that's a very unique, because that's a very unique structure that I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
So you are saying that many individuals might not have a direct reporting manager.
Yeah.
They're part of a project.
Yes.
Their performance is primarily driven by the
success
outcome
of the
of
project.
that success of the project. And however, I have someone who is just focused for my career growth.
Yes.
Got it.
This was the starting principle, and this was the initial structure of the teams, right? And things started. I think it worked beautifully. I really enjoyed that journey. I think around the 100 people mark is where it started having some cracks. There are people who having a clear reporting manager helps. One of the original visions, if let's say the AI coach vision had kind of taken off, then probably would have been still a smallish kind of team and done. But because of the nature of the product that it evolved into, we became over time a larger team with a different kind of roles and responsibilities coming in and so on. So we started gravitating more and more towards a more traditional structure, which over time ended up being the pod structure.
Today, how big is the team?
Overall, we have about 500 people. This is a central team. Of course, there's a big, large frontline staff.
But of course, those will not be the direct employees or team. So on this, you mentioned that in a smaller team, a particular structure which is more project-led, and then started showing some cracks as you scaled. What were those challenges? What caused you to move from that structure to pod structure?
I mentioned one, which is like some people having that clear reporting manager helps with a lot of clarity. Like more, the mentor could not give the right kind of feedback growth, which a typical reporting manager can give. Right? It's still a very contextless conversation that you would have with a mentor, right? Whereas someone who's working very closely with you and then observing you do things on a day-to-day basis can give more actionable feedback and help you with the growth, right?
No, I think it explains of a scale problem. That at a smaller scale,
you still know
the
what is
mentor
happening.
will have a lot of context, even if they are not working with you every day. But at larger scale, that context might start getting lost.
That, and second thing which we really liked, if treating everything as a project, there is no continuity in context, right? Right now we have a growth pod, for example, and that growth pod continues to be the growth pod for the last 3 years. So over time context builds up, and so the person there over time, like pattern recognition improves,
you
and
start building deep insights of what you are
and
doing.
that helps.
Yeah,
right? So
no, absolutely.
Another example of things.
Absolutely. Double clicking on the culture.
Yes.
Right. What would you call as few, very core tenets of, cult culture, that maybe 2, 3, 4 things that you would ideally want, or Mukesh, you would have correctly thought that everyone in the team should live by these.
Right. There's a lot of conscious thought put into like avoiding politics, right? Which is typically creeps in. And one of the choices that we made, we continue to hold to it, but in a slight, we have tweaked over time. But one of the policy experiments that we did for a long time was not to have a clear not to have a typical appraisal bell curving, right? And instead, there is just are you doing well or are you not doing well, right? And if you're doing well, every 6 months you get a flat increment. And the policy was very, very transparent. There is no like I'm getting 7%, you're getting 10%, you're getting 12%, and a lot of it depends on just one person and your relationship with that one person, right? And they decide the bell curve, and a lot of energy is wasted in pleasing people rather than actually solving customer problems, right? And that was the thought, and we continue to have a very clear, transparent policy in terms of what the appraisal process is. There's no bell curving that we still don't do any
bell curving. I think for any smaller team, it just does not.
It just does not make sense
because it's in a way you are saying that few people must underperform.
Yes,
right. It just does not make sense. Maybe again, it's a function of scale. For a company of scale of say Amazon or TCS, it's needed.
Yes.
But for any small team, it just does not make sense. So your 2 parts. One is the bell curve. A smaller team, definitely, it's the right thing not to force fit people into a bell curve, right? The second part, which is more kind of in a way surprise / kind of gives me a lot of curiosity. That what were the learnings from that? That like in first principle, when I try to think of it, if someone is not underperforming, there's a timely feedback given to them, and that communication is fair. That you are not be able to deliver what is expected, and hence no hike for you.
Right.
However, people who are doing well, force-fitting them into any fixed hike, it could be 10% or whatever it might be. What kind of reactions did you see from that, or what were the learnings from that?
So, short answer, we didn't force fit. If someone does exceptionally well, they did get a promotion.
Then there's a promotion
is in, yes. And promotion is purely based on impact. It is not any time. Like if you deliver outsized measurable impact, then you get promoted. Like irrespective of when it happens, how it happens, etc. Like you will get promoted. So that was a reward mechanism for people who are doing really well, right? But there were cracks in the system. It was not a perfect system, obviously. Like there is a reason why.
Actually, one more scenario that I can think of, because often when someone is being hired, bands might be different.
Right. Yeah.
And in 6 months, you might realize that the person is actually outperforming.
Right. Yeah.
Right, so how do you then correct
That's a correction. That's a one-time correction. Like if someone is significantly outperforming, of course, those corrections we will do, and it is a one-time correction.
Got it.
Going back to just this policy, right? What the second order effects of this policy, right? Yes, it did. I strongly believe it did eliminate a lot of unnecessary energy waste in politics. Like
it's just
that,
every six.
it's very simple, very clear, very clear,
everywhere.
etc.
Yeah.
That was the good side of it, and so some version of that we continue to maintain, right? The bad side of it was, whether you like it or not, there are still underperformers, right? And once what the bell curve helps you do is there's a forcing function, right, where you are putting the manager or whoever that to the forcing function to say, yeah, clearly identify who are your bottom performers, right? Having that forcing function helps in at least for them to do that introspection and
it's
then say,
asking them a question.
Yes, tell me who are doing well, who are not doing well, etc. Whereas a system like this, it became an easy conversation for the manager, saying, okay, like, everyone is fantastic, everyone is fantastic, and so on, right?
Like
and
that
so
Lego movie, everything is awesome.
like so, but that is not true. Like there are clearly cases of so. How do you we couldn't bring that side of the pressure to come in? Like how do you identify the bottom performers? It works great when everyone is performing, but that's not true. Like your business is not growing at the same rate, and the impact is not created at the same rate, which means there are clearly bottom performers, and so that we need a way to identify them and so on. So that is the second order effect, which we didn't think of earlier, and that we had to then tweak and
right. No, makes sense. I think
it should not become socialism, right? And
correct, of course.
It is finally you will have
course.
to. That's
and then what is the current structure that you have on that?
It's a small tweak still. Like it is still, we are very transparent with what our hike percentages are going to be. We tell upfront, saying these are the things.
So basically now instead of just one layer, you might have probably few more tiers.
That's the only tweak that we do.
So either you get promoted, or there are few different tiers.
And we have a mechanism to question the people, the managers who gives us ratings if there is significant deviance. That is, if someone is taking the easy way out, saying I'm just going to say everyone in my team is doing well, then like give me evidence of that. Like bring some accountability into that. Is what is the second system change that we brought in. Some kind of a review mechanism to look back at how things happened in the last cycle and so on, right? So
the root of this was, you were mentioning that one very strong emphasis was how do you make sure there's no politics.
Yes.
Right? And generally a big root of politics is always that I have great relations with someone and that
so I'll get me.
Benefit, right? Generally a good break for that is having it very metric oriented.
Yes.
That your performance will be very, very heavily driven by the metric. Have you seen scenarios where it is just difficult to define a metric in certain roles or certain...
It is true. I mean, even let's say take a junior engineer, right?
Correct,
and what they're
this
doing.
is biggest problem in tech, product and design. Product not so much.
Yes, product at least you have a clear metric.
Correct.
Senior engineers, you can still say you are accountable for the outcome, right? But for junior engineers, it's hard to say like metric didn't move, so you are accountable for it, right? The engineer might have done everything that's asked of him, right? And he might have asked a question and probably what's asked is right kind of delivery at the right quality, everything, right? And they would have done a fantastic job of it, but metric didn't move. Then is that person accountable? In which case you need to use the judgment of the engineering manager, right? And they have to say, yeah, this person actually did well, everything that was asked, and high quality output, everything. But still, metric didn't move. That's fine. Like you still have to reward the work that the junior engineer did, right? And so those are the places where it's hard to define.
A little subjectivity will always come in. So one cultural element was ensuring that no politics, right? And definitely like very, very critical for any high performance organization. What other do you consider as core pillars, core guiding principles of culture?
Information asymmetry. Like there should be no information asymmetry in the organization. So I think the Netflix book, they call it manage with context, right? And that's something. I mean, I think that book was written more recently, but from day one, this is as a cultural thing that we believe in. For example, there is a meeting that happens on a weekly basis where we just review the financial performance of the company in the last 1 week. Like, are we tracking in terms of like what and that meeting probably would have 40-50 people, right? So everything is with respect to what is happening in terms of.
And this is basically a meeting open for everyone in the company.
Yes, yeah, and so everything related to the financial performance of the company is knowledge
Right.
that anyone has access to,
Right.
right? Of course, a lot of things now we have to see how it changes with leading
the
to
scale.
IPO, etc., with the
Yeah,
scale,
yeah.
etc.
I was
But
just
at least
about to
something.
come to that your weekly finance performance.
Yes.
Well, very solid tool for entire company
Yes.
as a private company to
Yes.
align to and operate with.
Yeah.
But in public markets,
It becomes
could
a
lead
very,
to very
yeah.
weird.
But that I'm just giving an example of what we believe in,
Correct.
right? And there are a bad sign would be where people try to gain influence by access to information, right? I'm closer to someone, I have access to information, I'll hold that information and use it as a way to leverage power, right? And so on. That is a very bad. That's something that we absolutely don't stand for, right? So whatever is information that should be available freely, and we encourage all leaders to behave that way. Like empower your teams with the right context, with the right information. Tell them what are the problems that need focus, that need attention, and that's when you get the best out of people, right? And so
No, I think and also deeper context
yes,
leads to better conversations.
yes,
So I myself is a big believer that the lesser the silos of information,
right,
the better high performance,
yes,
higher the performance of the team would be. But again, being a devil's advocate, that the kind of challenges sometimes it also presents with, and would love to hear how you solve for that. One is, of course, if you are towards becoming a public company,
right,
then it can lead to unintended or undesirable second order impact.
yes,
Another one is info security. Right, that from time to time you might have one bad apple,
right, yeah,
right, and then the wrong information being pulled and sent somewhere else, externally outside of the company, data theft, etc.
right, yeah.
Have you experienced such instances? One, my personal belief is always that you do not change a right system for 0.1% bad people.
Right. Yes.
But would love to hear your thoughts on that. Have you seen such instances happening? How or what are the safety mechanisms around that?
Right.
That you might have figured.
Thankfully, no. Like so far, we have not come across an example of a bad apple who information leak, etc. But we are wary of it. Like again, leading to the IPO. I've answered your first question. I don't know. Like honestly, what are the how things would change in terms of access to information?
That will be changed by the regulations actually.
Yes,
because as a public company, then there are certain cycles of information publishing that you can do.
That's only.
So that's driven by the policy, not by the culture. Then anymore. Unfortunate, but that's what it is.
And along with that is also a lot of things that we need to change. For example, even entrance to the office. Right now, we didn't want to have a clear access, but now we are putting that in place because again, it's one of those things that you need to do for in preparation for compliance thing. So I think once we takes a lot of those things more seriously, a lot of these things automatically get solved. It's just that we kept postponing it as much as possible.
It's like adulting, right? That's the way we can behave as a teenager. Once you grow up, you can't. Same thing happens with the organization. That it's maturing up to be an adult.
Yeah. So it's inevitable. That's a luxury we enjoyed so far, but I don't think so.
Continuing with the culture, given Cult being a fitness company,
right?
I had asked what is the average BMI of the Cult. One, of course, you should put a display of that. While post IPO, you might not be able to report the weekly revenues, but you can report the weekly BMI. Yes. But how is the culture of fitness inside Cult, and how is that driven?
Yeah, I think from day one I mentioned very mission oriented. So. And we are big users of our own product, and we are the biggest critics of our own product, and that's a luxury that we enjoy and we value it also, right? So, you would often see end of the day people just saying, "I'm going for this class," and then 3-4 people just tagging along and then going for that class, and that's very and there's a lot of sports also. Actually, I'll specifically talk about something that's been working really well in the last 6 months, a fairly new initiative, what we internally call Org.Fit. Right, and this Naresh, who recently took over as CEO, he has been championing this, and the amount of energy that has brought in. So the idea was simple: how do we promote a fitness and sports culture within the organization? Multiple ways in which we want to do it. One is making it easy. We always believed in this principle that if you make something easy, people will want to do it, right? And so how do you facilitate that, right? And for example, I might be interested in playing cricket, right? And but I'm just a headache of like I have to form a team and then book a ground and then do. That is what is a hurdle that might be on top of whatever work and family, etc. I don't want to do this, and that's what I'll keep postponing it. If we take away that whole logistics headache from you, so we have a team whose only job is to like how do you make it easy for making sure people are active, right? That is our first point of leverage. People who like started playing badminton after 10 years, and because now it's so easy to just say you just need to turn up for the session. Everything else is kind of taken care of for you, right? And that's an example. And within that, there's a WhatsApp group where people keep sharing their daily activities. I did this. So just mutual inspiration, accountability, and so on, and then challenges. And any other health related stuff. For example, nutrition. We have, I think that is next 2 weeks or so. We just got an email say there will be a nutritionist available in the office every week, once a week, right? So you can just walk in and get a consultation done and so on, right? And these are the things you cannot have fulfill that mission unless you live that mission within the org. And so
I have a hard question for you on connected to that. You mentioned that of course fitness is important. Now let's say I'm an engineer applying to Cult, and I'm obese.
Right.
Would you hire me or will you not hire me?
I will see the criteria is not whether you're fit or not, whether you have a passion for fitness or not. I remember specifically there was a HR candidate, which a senior HR candidate whom I also interviewed about a year back. Not in terms of just fitness, she was probably not fit, right? But in the interview, she was very. This was the reason she gave. She said, I want to join Cult because I want to become fit, and I think this environment will make me fit. I've tried to pursue fitness for a really long time, but that never happened. But I think environment, just the culture, will help me become fit, and this is the primary reason why I'm interested in joining Cult.
Very interesting.
And that okay, then welcome, right? And join us, and happy to help you. So mission orientation does not mean it is you have to be fit to join Cult. It's just you should care deeply about fitness and health.
No, and that makes sense because without that, it's difficult to perform. Even perform. It's not because there is any, I think, judgment or segregation, but in this environment, you will not perform. Coming to culture, could you, again, a harder question, that in this entire journey, have there been an instance where you felt that there is something which is getting broken culturally? Because it's even more so because it's not something that you can measure.
Right, yeah.
Because other things, the metric, what is causing that, and you fix that.
Yeah.
But tell us about certain time when you just, walked into office, you felt it, that, this is not correct. Or you walk into a cult center, and you feel that, this is not the right culture.
I can talk about one instance, which is very recent also, which is one of the, so we have core values, right? And again, part of the original constitution that I mentioned.
If you could share, would love to know what are those core values.
So first is build insanely great products, right? And so best way to grow is build a great product, right? There's nothing, marketing cannot solve a bad product, right? And so that is core value one. Second is blow away customer expectations, right? And third is nurture your own mind and body, where again you have to believe in the mission yourself, unless without that. And fourth is do the right thing always, which is again never cross that boundary of integrity, etc. So these are the core values. And if you look at it, two of those are very focused on customers, right? Which is blow away customer expectations and build insanely great products, right? And that's something that I think culturally we did really, really well. And from day one, we take pride in building great products, and we continue doing that. Pandemic, and then pandemic happened. Even in pandemic, we did that. Continue to hold a really high bar for products, but I think there was a short duration where it was mostly due to pandemic, post-pandemic recovery, and it was a bad phase for Cult where we had to survive and we had to come out of it and so on, right? And where we had to put disproportionate focus on growth. Right, and that tilted the balance a little bit, where you focus more on growth and probably drop the ball a little bit on the customer experience or product building, right, and blowing up customer experience. That's something, it was intentional, where it was more out of survival. We had to do it, we did it,
Right.
that correction is done now, and so now we are back to balance.
Right.
But there was a short duration where we had to just
Right.
feel this is what is the need of the hour, right?
Right.
And so we have to go through this phase,
Right.
and then when we'll get back to balance, and it was a conscious call we had to take.
Right,
And
right.
so yeah, that
I
is one
think
place
it's
where
always about the trade-offs, right?
Yes.
And at certain time you have to make the
Yeah.
right trade-offs needed
Correct,
for that
yes.
time. I think Cult went through a very interesting phase. Like externally, I can see three very, very interesting phases.
right,
Probably from 15 to 20
yeah,
pre-COVID,
yeah,
and then 20 to 22
yeah,
during COVID,
COVID, yes,
and then post maybe middle of 22 or
Yeah.
probably early 22
yes, yeah,
or so, where the
yes,
post-COVID
yes,
things started.
correct, yeah,
Right? Could you tell us about the three phases and how each
yeah,
pivot,
right, yeah.
what it looked like?
Yeah, I think pre-pandemic it was holistic health,
Yeah.
right? And we discussed we are very ambitious. We are trying to build 4 businesses under one
Right,
umbrella,
right.
which is a Cure.Fit. Some of it worked. Cult and EatFit had early. I mean, Cult was clear product market fit.
Correct.
And EatFit was early product market fit.
Correct.
Places where it was working really well, but some places where still we needed to problem solve, etc. MindFit and CareFit less so. We're still trying to figure out. CareFit had insane customer love. I don't know anyone who would have used the CareFit product. It was in terms of just primary healthcare. It was just a simple a diagnostic experience or a doctor consultation. It was a way above any other experience that you would get anywhere. But still, the whole product didn't make sense in terms of business model, a lot of things. So we still figuring it out. What pandemic also, I mean, amongst multiple things, it also taught us focus, right? And that's a lesson we learned in a hard way, right? So, by the way, there's another business also that we incubated, but it was still going low-key, was a products business, which is fitness apparel and so on. So that continues to be, I'll talk more about that also. Then pandemic happened. And then so pandemic, we thought we'll pivot completely to digital. And so that will become our primary business. And whereas the physical centers would be a secondary business, was the early pandemic sentiment in the org, right? And we gave it we gave it a lot of focus, resources, etc. But I think by late 21, early 22, it was clear that it has probably hit a peak, and it had started plateauing or started slowing, degrowing also, right? And so, whereas the rebound started happening, right? And so, and that was also the time when the Zomato investment happened, and along with that, the Fitso acquisition happened, right? And so, and that was very close to the fitness business, the sports business, right? A lot of the mechanics of that business is similar to what so it was unlike, let's say, Cult.Fit and CareFit, right? These are dramatically different businesses, or even EatFit for that matter was a dramatically different business than, whereas fitness and sports are very close. So that acquisition happened, and so that became a second business line that started doing well. And a third business line that again took off was another acquisition that we did, OneFit Plus, which was on fitness equipment, and also the original business of fitness products, the apparel business, even that started showing some green shoots. So that's again a business that is now that is the second largest business under Cult right now, and that continues to do well. You would have seen offline stores in HSR, in Indranagar, etc. Right, and that's fairly recent, last 6 months or so. Something that we continue to. So
I
the
think
current
one interesting thing that I noticed in this entire journey is lot of acquisitions that were made.
Yes.
Ended up becoming really big units.
Yes,
in themselves.
agreed. Yeah.
Right.
So the current state of business, like there is fitness and sports, which is the fitness services, right? And then there is fitness products. That's which is our stores and online where we sell apparel and then footwear and also fitness equipment for working out at home. Right. And so that's the current portfolio of products.
Very interesting. Fantastic journey so far. And as the last section of the podcast, I would love to touch upon your view on the future. We talked about 8 years of journey.
Right.
But I think so fitness and education as two parts, as I see, are primary contributors to the quality of human talent, human resources that we have. As a father of 2 young kids, right? I would have 2 questions. One is that what would fitness look like in 2040?
Right.
If I ask you to imagine that.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And secondly, like thoughts on education. That as a father of 2 young kids, what kind of education system do you think that you would want them to go through?
Right.
Would love to hear your thoughts on this. That Vision 2040. That what would fitness look like in 2040? AI definitely is. Definitely, it's not just a passing fad.
Right. Yeah.
It's something that is very, very profound. It's definitely going to leave an impact. So, what are your views on what the future might look like?
Let me start with fitness, right? 2040, by the way, like it's very hard to imagine because it is not just the world is changing; the slope of change is also very narrow,
crazy,
right? It is crazy. Correct. So 5 years back,
it might
10
be
years back,
the most steep curve that any of us have probably world has ever seen.
It might be actually counterproductive to try and imagine a 2040 with the slope of change because the opportunities that are opening up. But at a macro level, some of the things that are true and will continue to be true, I'll talk about those things, right? If you just look at fitness penetration in India, for example, right, it is 0.5%, right, and of our population. US, which is in terms of fitness penetration the highest, is early 20s, 22% or something, right? So the gap is just dramatic.
The population base is so much different.
But if you look at more emerging markets, like take China for example, we're in a similar zone as ours, sub 1% 15 years back. Along with the development, the hyper development that they saw in the last 15 years, their fitness penetration is close to 10% now.
Oh wow!
Right, so and this is a pattern that repeats in every country. Correct. Wherever that steep development that happens.
GDP per capita will always be very closely correlated to investment into both education and fitness.
Exactly. So these are very closely related. Correct. So that decade of growth is now ahead of us. Right, and so also being the largest player in the fitness space in India, the onus is upon us, the cult, and that's something that we take and the responsibility is on us. Right. That's something that we take very seriously. Like, how do you help grow this market? Right, it is not just about like taking a share of the pie, but instead growing the pie. Right, and a lot of our products are built in that direction. And we, for example, the group class, we truly believe is a market expanding phenomenon where people who were earlier not interested in fitness because of the vibe of a gym, right? But they loved the group class experience, right? And the variety that it offered, the kind of social experience that it offered. So the number of people who pursued fitness has gone up with Cult as a product that's coming in, right? And we see evidence of that also. In Bangalore, the fitness penetration growth is highest when compared to other cities. And that's largely because Cult penetration is also highest in Bangalore. And it's not just something we believe in. There is data also.
What is the percentage of health penetration in Bangalore as of today?
It's close to 5%.
Oh wow, that's a crazy number.
Right. Yeah. And the speed at which it's growing is also faster, right? And so that is the job to do, job to be done for Cult. Like, how do you make or navigate that journey from 0.5% to 10%? It will happen. How do you accelerate that, right? And what is at stake is clear. Like, if fitness is especially important for Indians, right? Which is because we are genetically predisposed to metabolic diseases than the US population. A simple statistic, right? If you look at, I know fitness penetration is also high, but the obesity rates in US are also extremely high, right? And it's above 40% right now. Correct. But if you look at diabetes, it is close to 10% in US. In India, obesity rate and diabetes rate are exactly the same. Both are at the 10%, right? That's because our genetic makeup is such that we can't afford to put on weight. There are scientific reasons why. There are people who become big, and there are people who become unhealthy. Indians tend to become unhealthy before becoming big, right? And so you would have a phenomenon where someone with a BMI of 30 in US, they'll be perfectly healthy. Metabolically they'll be very, very healthy. Like, they'll not have any diabetes or blood pressure or any of the typical metabolic diseases. Whereas you would have in India someone with a BMI of 23, which is considered absolutely normal, right? But they would have diabetes, right? And that is purely genetic. It's just chance that happened. So we cannot afford to go into that zone where we have become unhealthy and then play a catch-up game on fitness. We have to be ahead of the curve, right? And that's something.
I think at scale that will be a massive stress on public healthcare system.
Yes, absolutely.
If there are 50% people with diabetes, it's going to be crazy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that is that's part of the mission that we believe in. And so how do we navigate that journey from 0.5% to 10% in much faster pace, and how do you make that happen is something that we truly believe in. So that is the kind of macro picture for fitness. I think very similar in terms of education also. As education is something, I mean, it is a superpower. Like if someone, that is the true unlock to any development. True development happens with education. So penetration, I don't know what the penetration percentages are. I'm sure that is again, both fitness and education are very similar in terms of behavior,
absolutely.
right? It's something
I
that
see so many parallels between cult and scalar actually.
Yes.
That, it's just about adherence, motivation.
About adherence, motivation, absolutely. Education and very, very closely related, right? And coming to the second question, like what would education mean, and especially as a parent, right?
Yeah.
What am I looking at?
Yeah.
See, there is, I mean, all of us went through a particular education system. I think not to we are in a place of privilege, and
No, of
so
course.
we are. It is not that the education system was bad or anything. Like it had its own, but it's not a perfect system, and there are places where I think we could have, for example, thinking like doing I strongly believe the education system, the traditional education system does not promote a lot of independent thinking, right? And in fact stifles, right? Where you are rewarded for conformity more than like doing independent thinking. While there are 100 things that are good about it, and this is a negative which is not a good trade-off for me. Like how do you get to education system where you can have the good parts of the current education system while not stifling the creativity and independent thinking? That is something I think some of the alternate schools have kind of struck that balance. There are people who take it too extreme and go very wild in terms of just alternate, but there are places where, and I would like to see more of that, and not just that. And in terms of just education, how do you make? How I truly believe everyone has that some inner drive and something that some ambition. How do you nurture that, and how do you make that happen?
I think curiosity is one of the most powerful things which
Absolutely.
every kid is born with.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it gets killed for many of them through the journey.
Yes. Yeah. How do you preserve that? How do you nurture that? Is something that I deeply care about, and that's something that, and I think something that you should, being in this domain, see how to make happen at scale. With that is one. And finally, coming to AI, right? And I think any change that we want to do, I think technology is just is a massive tool that can make wonders. And I'm a technologist at heart, and any change that we want to do, the amount of leverage tech can give is insane, right? And these are hard problems, right? Both education, we mentioned education and fitness. Finally, it boils down to a behavior change problem, right? And people who can do things consistently, they will see results, both in education and both in and in fitness. The hard problem is how do you do it, right? And I believe technology, especially AI, with the trajectory it is in right now, can be foundationally bring in more capabilities that can accelerate this journey, and the reward at the end of it is crazy. And so it is worth investing in it, worth spending time on it, and use all the tools at hand to solve these fundamental problems. It just the society can be a lot more happier, healthier, right? If we can crack these problems with the tools.
Particularly in health and fitness.
Yes.
In Cure.Fit, do you see any particular use case where AI could just, because I can talk about that within our ecosystem.
Right.
We see so many use cases, and actually to quite an extent we have already started building many of those. Where the large language models capabilities can not only make a lot of processes more efficient, but also actually better experience for the user.
Right.
One example could be, for example, that if I'm teaching you data structures and algorithm, and I gave you a problem and you're stuck with it. And which happens with everyone, right? When you're learning it for the first time. One approach would be that I have teaching assistants who could sit with you, review your code, give you some nudges, hints that what mistake you might be making. Other could be there's a large language model. It is pre-trained on that. Because I don't want to see the solution. I want to figure out how to build it, right? We have experimented with it. Works fantastically. Right. And in very measurable metric, AI teaching assistant is performing better than an average of human teaching assistant.
Okay. Nice.
It's crazy. Right. And it's operated at a scale of 10,000s of the learners.
Right.
Have you seen any such interesting patterns emerging?
Patterns, definitely. I think we are well onto that journey. So that's something that we have taken very seriously in the last few months. We'll see some, but the macro picture is very similar to what you mentioned. Like an example I would say is in terms of, let's say, adherence or results, etc. The cohort of people who get the maximum is what's the personal training within the gym, right? People who take up personal training, the chances of them adhering, because there is
Absolutely.
clear one-on-one attention given to you, etc. But the problem with this is affordability. It's
Right.
crazy expensive, right? And so, how do you get that goodness at scale, right? And multiple ways. Like you have, um, uh, there are two at least. One, how do you get that? How do you amplify that human, right? If the human can reach one person, how can you make that person reach 10 people? Make that person reach 100 people, right?
Yeah.
That is providing leverage to the human,
Yeah.
and that automatically gives you the next level of affordability.
Right.
Then there is a second level, which is the kind that you're talking about, where it is a pure digital. How can you give a experience which is as good as the as a personal trainer without the need of a human?
Right.
Then the sky is the limit, right? And affordability just goes out.
Just last week, Reid Huffman had shared his video
Hmm.
where he has created his AI avatar,
Right.
which looks like him,
Right.
talks like him,
Yeah.
and he's having a conversation with himself. Right. And
Right.
I can only imagine, let's say, a fitness trainer having
Yes.
that avatar, and
Yes.
like I don't even know if it is the real person or
Right.
or
Yeah.
it's the virtual avatar of him who
Yes.
is coaching me,
Yeah.
guiding me, and
Yeah.
giving me inputs.
I don't think these are very far away with the growth
I
that
think,
we're
like,
looking at it.
I think we are just sitting, or maybe already ahead of the inflection point already.
Yes. Completely agree. Yeah.
And it would be crazy that, as you said, that pretty obvious that having a personal trainer,
Yeah.
like I don't know, you might know the number, but like, does it 5x or 10x the probability of completion?
Right.
Won't be surprised if it is
Yeah.
such a number, right?
Probably 10x. Yeah.
Now, if you could also reduce the cost of a private trainer
Yes.
by 10x as well,
Yes.
or 20x,
Yes.
then I think it's a game changer.
Exactly.
You know, with probably the 10% penetration target that you were
Yes.
talking about, that
Yeah.
might just happen much faster.
Yes. Exactly.
So very, very exciting. Thank you so much for taking the time out
Thank you.
and sharing this very insightful journey. I'm sure a lot of nuggets of deep insights were embedded in the whole conversation.
Right.
Glad to have you here and looking forward to host you again soon.
Likewise. It was a wonderful chat.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.